This assignment is pretty straightforward. We are going to use paper mache, but we're going to use it in a slightly different way. Probably something you're more used to at the elementary school level. You're going to need a toilet paper roll or anything like that. And I'm going to give you a balloon like this. These balloons tend to be a little bit more round, but if you don't have a perfectly round balloon, then when you fill up your balloon, just hold it here at the edge and then just fill up this space, tie it up, and that'll give you a somewhat round balloon. So I'm going to fill up this balloon and then I'm going to hot glue it to this, and I'll be right back to hot glue it. When you fill up your balloon, you want to make sure it's not too big, but ultimately I'll leave that decision up to you. Just remember, the bigger it is, the more work you're going to have to do. So just make sure you don't go too big. I like to do something that can be held in the hand, but I think something around that size would be good for me. Make sure it's not too much bigger than this, right? Once your balloon is filled up, the next step is to get your hot glue, and you're going to put it just around the edge of your toilet paper roll or paper roll. I'm going to let that cool a little bit, so hopefully it doesn't pop the balloon. And after a few seconds, I'm going to try to put it on, and that should hold without popping. And remember, the objective here is to make the Bob-omb. Now, you know the next step. You should be very familiar with it. We're going to start paper mache, and we're just going to paper mache all around the balloon, but we're going to give it much more than 2 layers, maybe 4 layers, because we want that to be strong. We don't want it to collapse, and that's going to be the base of our next Mario character, which is the Bob-omb. So I'm going to start paper macheing, and we're going to do that the same way that we have been. So you're going to take just regular copy paper, and you can hold this up. Right, so this serves as a stand. You're going to put your name right here, so when we put them away, we know who they belong to, and we're not going to have a problem with that. I'll get your paper mache mix, and you just start putting it on, same way you've been doing it. Only difference is you're going to do this with multiple layers. Might have to get your hands dirty, but your paper mache mix is non-toxic, so it'll come right off. This is a round object, so maybe the smaller the pieces, the better off you're going to be as far as keeping the roundness of it, which I think is important for this, since it is meant to look like a little Bob-omb. Alright, so I'm going to add at least 1 layer. I'll come back, and I'll come back between every layer. I don't need to show you guys that whole thing, because you already know what that's like. So the way I'm laying the paper mache mix on is I'm just getting it all on first and kind of going down halfway, and then I'm going to put the paper on top, maybe not overlapping, but I'm just going to put a bunch of paper on top, and then I'll glue that paper down, and then in between the gaps I will apply more paper, more mix. Let me show you. And I think this way is just going to be faster. So right here, I'm just, without overlapping it, just going to put a piece. Then as I move on over here, I'll put another piece. Now, once I do that all the way around, I'm going to go back with my mix. And you might actually have to hold it down a bit, but if you just tap it like this, I think you'll be okay. Tapping it like that seems to keep it in place without moving it around too much. And then you could push it or slide it around. The brush, I mean. Okay, that's what I'm gonna do. So I've covered most of the top. Now I'm just gonna put glue on the rest of the balloon and I'm gonna continue that process. Don't worry about the edge right there. And don't worry about the piece that we can't see. That's through the little roll of cardboard. That's the piece where we're going to put the top, where the fuse is going to be. Let me just take advantage and start putting it on these pieces. If you give that a little bit of time, it should kind of stick with the glue that's underneath, and then you could just put it right on top. And we might just use the cardboard as the top piece where the fuse connects. All right, keep doing that until everything is covered. And even these cracks, so I wouldn't consider this a layer until these cracks are covered, like the spaces in between. And then that'll be the first layer. And you do it again. I'm thinking 3 to 4 layers. Okay, remember not to overlap your two dry, well, I don't know how to describe it. Just when you're applying another piece of paper, don't overlap them if they don't have glue over them. So right here I have a space where I need a very unique cut. And if I were to put another paper in there, it would overlap with these that don't have glue on them. So instead of just putting a paper on there, I'm gonna glue down the ones that I do have. That way I can comfortably put a paper over it, and if it overlaps, well then it's gonna be okay. If you do overlap them, then you're just gonna have a weak point in that space where they overlap, and I would like to avoid that. Now that I have put glue there, now it's okay to overlap because now there's a layer of glue in between the two, and that's what you're gonna do in all of these pieces. Once it's time to start covering the gaps, what I would do, you still have to make sure that they don't overlap. What I'm doing is I'm taking strips, and let's say there's a gap right here, so I'm just going to put that there. And now this is going to create a little space here, but we'll cover that in the second layer and so on. So I'm just covering up what I can without having it overlap, and I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to glue over those areas. If you feel like you can't continue without overlapping, like I have right here, just put glue on this piece and this piece, and then put the piece that's going to go here. Again, that's so you create a layer in between, and it's going to hold together better. Now it's okay to go over. I'm almost done with the first layer, but as I'm continuously inspecting it, there's little openings to the balloon. So I'm gonna keep finding those little gaps, fill them with a piece of paper, and once they're all covered up, that'll be my first layer. And the reason we have to do many layers with this is because this balloon technique, like one layer, for instance, if you only have one layer and you pop the balloon inside, it will collapse, including the paper mache mix. It's very fragile. So I'm gonna finish up that first layer. Okay, so I finally plugged up the remaining gaps, and I'm going to just paper mache over those areas. And once I do, that's going to be the first layer done. I'm going to let it dry before I come back for my second layer. And ultimately, you guys will learn how many layers we're going to need. So I'll let you know. I'll let you know what works, because we are going to have to pop that balloon inside. And once we pop it, we don't want this to collapse. We want it to keep its round form. And we could have done what we did for the piranha plant, that method, to try to create a sphere. But I just want to teach you guys a different way to do it. I think you could also go, I'm not going to allow it for this assignment, but if you were working on your own, you could also go get like a giant styrofoam ball, like a Christmas ornament. And I think that might work. You just have to be careful when you paint the styrofoam to make it look good, but I think it might work. But what we're doing is we're learning different techniques. Remember, the class is about learning, it's not about producing. So I want you guys to learn this way. Okay, that's the first layer. Look it over one more time. Make sure that all of the paper is paper mache, the mix. And I'm gonna let that dry before I add my second layer. You should let that dry. Just put it away in storage and let it and pick it up again next class. So this isn't completely dry. And as it starts to dry, you can see the little bits that I missed. But I think it's dry enough. I'm gonna start applying my second layer, and I'll come back when that's done. So the second layer is on, and I'm just gonna let that dry and add one more layer. I think 3 should be enough. Same way. It takes a while, but I think 1 class period is enough per layer. So you'll have 3 class periods to add 3 layers. Or maybe more, or maybe less. I don't know. Depends on the moment. My second layer is almost dry. I'm gonna start applying the third layer. And you determine what you think is enough. I think just for purposes of the video, I'll stop at 3. But I really want it to hold up once the balloon is popped. Which you can see the balloon still is inflated and it's in there. You kind of check to see how much bounce it has as well. So yeah, I'm gonna do a third layer, and I'm gonna stop there. I'm just finalizing the third layer, and once that's done, it's got some weight to it too. You can feel it's starting to get heavier. I think that'll be enough to hold its form once I pop the balloon. But this is the first step. So do this, and then on the next video you'll see what we're gonna do next. So I've applied the third layer, and I'm gonna stop there. Try to make sure that you don't have any edges that are coming up too much. I know it's inevitable. And the smaller the pieces you use, the longer it's gonna take, but the better it's gonna look. And we'll see what the final result is. I mean, this is my first time doing this. I don't think it'll be bad. We'll see. That's it for the first video.